This morning's provocation from the North is just the latest reminder of the risks each one of you face.
That is Vice President Pence. He's visited South Korea. He visited the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. And the rhetoric is ratcheting up between the United States and North Korea. North Korea says they will continue to launch missile tests of nuclear-tipped ballistic missiles. They failed on the weekend. The U.S. says they won't tolerate it. The National Security Advisor, Lieutenant General McMaster, had this to say about this.
This problem is coming to a head, and so it's time for us to undertake all actions we can, short of a military option, to try to resolve this peacefully.
So what does this mean? The North Korean peninsula has been a sort of Cold War, but it's heating up. Where do they go from here? The U.S. has urged China to rein in their client state, North Korea, but as President Xi told Donald Trump, it ain't that easy. Elliot Tepper is a distinguished senior fellow, the Norman Patterson School of International Affairs at Carleton. He joins us now. Elliot Tepper, always good, sir, to have you on the program, and I hope you've had a good family Easter weekend. But what do you make of the vice president and the national security advisor's rhetoric as it heats up?
We are celebrating here the idea of spring and renewal and rejuvenation, and the world has gotten, meanwhile, a lot darker. The raising of the threat level over the North Korean situation has been marked. Basically, now we do have a Trump red line. He has taken a back burner issue, deliberately moved it to the front burner. The situation now is that somebody has to deliver somehow on something. The crisis no longer can be, in a sense, postponed.
Yeah, let's talk about that, Elliot Tepper. Some say this is not a crisis Trump brought on, but it is the testing from Kim Jong-un, who's a dangerous man. Some call him unstable. Nonetheless, he must be reined in. And others say there was a kind of stability, and Donald Trump has ratcheted up the tension there. How do you read it?
This is a crisis of choice. The crisis was there, simmering. There's no question at all that an emergent breakout nuclear weapon state in North Korea is a hugely terrifying moment in our global politics. That is, if we're looking for one issue other than Syria itself that can really destabilize the world, in this case, with a nuclear implication, it is North Korea. It is a situation that's been allowed to simmer, and clearly the Trump administration has said, under our watch, it's not going to happen. This is our choice. This is our red line. We are now going to force China to come to some decisions, and we're going to work with them on that, but we are not going to permit North Korea to become a nuclear weapon state.
Okay, I get it. I've heard it, and I understand the idea.
Yeah.
What do you actually do? Because we know that North Korea has buried their nuclear weapons. There's tunnel systems. He's declared that any preemptive move by the U.S. will lead to a retaliatory strike. Seoul, South Korea, is right on the border. This is a very dangerous neighborhood. Japan is jumpy about this. The Chinese are jumpy about this. What exactly, for all the talk, can the U.S. do?
There's a question whether they have an idea of what they want and how they're going to get it. Basically, they've ratcheted up the tension, said we want something good to happen. We're working with our Chinese and our new Chinese friends and also our traditional allies, Japan and South Korea, and something will happen. There is in place something nobody's even bothering to talk about. There is a process for dialogue called the Six-Party Talks, which has all the key players around the region, and they're supposed to be, China chairs those, Evan, and they have failed to deliver. So essentially this is an effort to force China to recalculate its national interest from not wanting a collapsed North Korea for reasons of refugees, but also they don't want an American ally right at their border with American troops. The grand bargain that people were talking about, that is, Donald Trump, the great bargainer, was going to make a deal with China to make them finally step up on the North Korea situation. It turns out that grand bargain they're talking about is probably not grand enough to do anything, which is they were talking about, well, we won't call you a currency manipulator, and we will hold off a bit on our trade talks, and you'll do so much better with us if you deal. But it's not at all clear, as you and I have talked about a number of times. On the one hand, China is the only major lever that the world has. On the other hand, this is not a puppet state there, and North Korea has moved to reduce Chinese leverage by reducing the human potential for a regime change. That is, the young boy got rid of his uncle, who was considered Beijing's man, and now got rid of his older brother through assassination in Malaysia. So China's levers are not clear. It is clear China could do a lot more if they choose, and the whole game we're seeing right now is to force China to choose, and it's a very high-stakes gamble.
Yeah, to choose, but then the question is, what does China even do? I mean, they have a huge amount of leverage, and they've, in terms of energy, in terms of lending money to a very, very poor country. But Trump's moving very quickly on this. What is the end goal here? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Is the end goal to what? Disarm them? Get rid of their nuclear arsenal? That seems very difficult to figure out. Is the end goal stability? Is their end goal to stop testing nuclear weapons? What is it? The official stated goal on all sides, other than inside North Korea, is a denuclearized North Korea. But the more pressure that's put on them and the more threat they feel, the less likely it is they will give up what they see as their sole and only means of preserving their regime. And regime maintenance is really what the goal is of the North Koreans. So this communist dynasty. So we are into a very imponderable situation with the major global power, the U.S., now making a move without any clear lines of how to get out of it. This is very dangerous. Well, and as if that's not the only situation, he's now dropped the mother of all bombs in Afghanistan. No one's they're fighting on the Afghan-Pakistani border, but that clearly was a symbol of some kind. We're all trying to figure out what it symbolized. Is it a message for the fight in Afghanistan? B, is it a message to Kim Jong-un in North Korea?
It will be read in North Korea and everywhere else as, look, America is willing to use really powerful weapons. The Trump administration will act. However, the reality is that action that you just talked about, the mother of all bombs, that was really an Obama plan that was finally put into place, and apparently without, and this is rather worrisome, without the knowledge and engagement of the commander-in-chief. He has decentralized decision-making, and that decision-making, we hear, it's hard to get all the facts, that decision was really taken without involving him until after the fact. So, sure, the missiles in Syria, the Moab, all these are both actions taken by the United States militarily, a muscular diplomacy, but it's very unclear that there's any kind of really strategy in depth to deal with the implications. What's going to happen next? You
said, Elliot Tepper, strategy in depth, and I think that's the key word here. He's dropping bombs in Syria and Tomahawk missiles. He's dropped a big bomb in Afghanistan, and that's an ongoing fight. He's ratcheted up tensions with North Korea. So you've got Russia, you've got China, you've got North Korea, you've got Syria. This big stuff. Overall, if you were to look back, is this, and again, it reminds me of what Nixon, his old advisor Haldeman said, the madman theory, when he quoted Richard Nixon saying to him about the North Vietnamese, they might think I'll drop a nuclear bomb. They'll think I'm so crazy that they're going to come to the table for peace. Of course, they never did. But is this the madman theory, or is it just reactive stuff?
It's probably everyone's saying, well, look, this unpredictability is a real asset, that the opposition doesn't know what will happen next. It makes them on edge. It makes them more willing to deal. Of course, it also unsettles allies. What does Japan think of the possibility, or South Korea think of the possibility, that by miscalculation or even by accident, a war could break out in their neighborhood and it would involve them even though they didn't start it? So we are in a moment of very high tension, perhaps the highest in many years, in terms of a potential major conflagration involving millions of people.
doomsday clock? We used to talk about that with Cuba. Where is it right now?
Well, I was going to check to see if it moved. I haven't seen that it has. It had been moved upon Trump's election to 3.5 minutes before midnight.
Wow.
And that's a great move from, a decade and a half ago. Was that, I don't know, at 10 or 11 minutes. So it has been moved closer. They've also started, by the way, to incorporate environmental threat as part of that, not just nuclear. But the nuclear threat, I over and over emphasize this, this is the dominant threat to our existence as a species, and right now we are in a worse and more tense situation over that issue than we have been in a very long time.
Elliot Tepper, Distinguished Senior Fellow with the Norman Patterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University, watching the situation in North Korea closely. Thank you, sir.
Certainly, Evan.